Welcome to On Top of the Covers, a weekly podcast by Orlove, dedicated to all of you creative visionaries, entrepreneurs, artists, makers, disruptors around the world, people doing things differently, as I always say. And every week we feature inspirational stories of people contributing to the culture of music. They're just like you in a lot of ways. They're thinking outside the box, probably anti-status quo, and wanting to reshape the dynamic of some form of innovation or just doing things differently. And so what we do is we dive into how they do it creatively, artistically, personally, professionally. And, we're grateful to be doing this every single week. I'm Matt Gottesman. I'm director of the Orlove brands. And of course, you can find us online at We Are Orlove on Instagram. Reach out. It's us behind the scenes. We are constantly interacting with all of you. And you can also find me at Matt Gottesman on Instagram. As I say to everybody, I've been answering everybody's texts and DMs and replies and responses for the last nearly decade. Believe it or not, I get to all of them. And I really appreciate you guys. And, as just an extension of kind of why we're doing this, we always say that music is one of the biggest connectors in the world. And it doesn't really matter if, as a common bond, it doesn't really matter if it's coming from the listening side or from the creative side or from the innovation side, the business side, whatever it might be. There's something inherently amazing about music that is constantly bringing us all together, right? So we here open up the conversations about the art, the contributors, the missions, the businesses. We want to show you unconventional paths to success because, let's be honest, unconventional is way more fun and something that we can personally relate to. So we're going to dive right in. I have another incredible guest today, Travis Rosenblatt. And just to give you kind of a quick background on him, and then we're going to dive right in. He's the founder of A&R SaaS provider Meddling. Former major and indie label A&R turned software developer and entrepreneur. Already, I love this guy. Once we get to geek out on software. He founded A&R SaaS provider Meddling, as I mentioned, which has provided modern artist discovery services to the majority of major labels since 2015. We're going to talk about how he got there, why that this is such an important facet when we look at data and trends and things in an ever-changing environment right now, especially. And over the course of a decade in the music industry, he had also run a label dedicated to international releases in the US for Universal Music Group. He managed a variety of recording artists, including Rick Ross, and was a member of Techstars Music 2019 class, focused on creating new global publishing royalty collection platform. Travis, thank you for being here, man. How's it going?
Thanks for having me. I'm just happy to have survived last night's flooding and doing all right.
Amazing. Hopefully you're in full recoup mode and you're rejuvenated and, just grateful to have you here. And we're going to just dive right in today. So as I mentioned before the show, we're very conversational, but the first question is always the best, which is, is always the same. How do we get here? Because I know I can tell people about Meddling. I know we're going to talk about Meddling, but I'd love to know as far back as you want to go, the course of
sure.
of action.
I mean, the answer is certainly not intentionally. I never sat down and was like, okay, great. Like, I'm going to start a company, that does this, or even start a company at all. It really came out of, working at record labels, seeing just a lot of the inefficiencies and then seeing, the ones that I had to deal with every day, which was just, seemed super obvious to me. It's like, it's my job to try and find new artists. Tell me the artists that are out there in the order that I need to check them out. Like, tell me what's going on where, so I can have, my finger on the pulse. And that was, a really difficult thing to do. And, there was this transition period from, you just had to know kind of the lawyers and the managers and, the agents and go to shows and kind of be in the thick of deal flow. And then, the deal flow kind of left that protected elite area of kind of being in the know and just having to have the right lawyers, right managers, whatever. It really went to the people. The audience could start to control, culture just by, this is what I'm listening to. This is what I'm playlisting. This is what, I, as an audience, kind of get to select what I want to hear. And so the power changed hands. And that meant that, labels had to do some catching up and figure out, what are people listening to? Where are they listening to it? Why are they listening to it? Is this, something that we can help with? Is this something we want to get behind? And just being able to do the basic knowledge stuff of what's going on was impossible. So ended up, leaving the label world and creating, again, accidentally just a system to do just that, to do simple coverage, to just tell people what's happening where so they at least know about it.
And first of all, thank you. Because maybe this is the first question I'll ask about this before I go on a tear of questions with that. How long do you think that this has been going on with the shift of the power changing the hands and into the people?
I mean, started with just digitization of everything. It certainly accelerated rapidly with streaming and then social music components.
Right.
But I mean, even before that, you could start to see kind of one by one. Okay, you could start, buying singles instead of the records that had to be signed and then sent to, to stores. But even back then, the A&R research used to be that you would see what a local radio station was playing and then call the local record store to see if people were going and buying it. And you were kind of looking for that relationship. This is, getting pushed on this audience. Do then they care to go and actually buy the record? And we're essentially doing the same thing, but now, it's streams, it's TikToks, it's Shazams, it's all kinds of things. People aren't stuck, finding out about things based on what was getting played on the radio, which, forever was the only way to do it.
I think I love the fact that, and I agree with you, I think it probably started around Napster or AOL chat rooms. No, it probably started around Napster.
Yeah.
But you're right, between streaming and social music components, it's an interesting progression. And I think that once artists had the original was, I have an underground fan base. They somehow find out about me, and they come to my different shows in a local region. Social took that online, made it global, and now anybody that can relate now gets enthralled with that artist. We have a different underground now, and a lot more control from the artist in terms of their influence. So I love that you saw that that's where we're heading, and it became a lot more like one-off type of deals or things like that, or like, hey, let's just focus on this single or this collaboration or this, thing. So what propelled you to get into the software side of it, which I, by the way, love? I mean, that's digital and social, or not social, tech is my background for like 20 years. So I love that that's something that was kind of maybe a by accident thing, but how did that come about?
When I was doing A&R for 300, we had a partnership with the Twitter music team. And I would essentially go to San Francisco and sit in the Twitter offices, where I went 3 or 4 times. And the idea was, we were just going to capture conversation on Twitter, and so we'd see, who was talking about what, how early were they talking about it, what are they talking about now, and see if we could capture kind of conversation around music and use it to keep tabs on, what we should be aware of. And that never really came together. But what did, out of all of my visits, were just a bunch of engineers being like, well, why do you need us? Why don't you just go build this thing? And me saying, well, I'm just a lowly A&R guy. I don't know anything. Surely you have to be a genius to be able to do this computer programming stuff. It seemed like magic. They'd pull up a screen and make computers do things. And then I left 300 very end of 2014, and suddenly I had some time on my hands, and really took some online tutorials. Codecademy.com, found whatever was free. Started doing some practice, and put together a super early version of what I have now, just because it was kind of fun to figure out if I could. And then I sent it to a bunch of heads of A&R around that I was talking to them all about potentially jobs, and instead I also said, okay, well, how much does this service cost? It's like, oh, okay, I have to actually figure this out. This is going to be, this is a thing. So I just had to commit to, learning how to build it, building it, and trying to sell it all at the same time. So that was about 8 months until I got my first two customers on. So it was really, 20-hour days, me and my laptop and on my sofa, just because I didn't have a backup plan. It's like, all right, we're going to do this now. And I'm Probably still a really shitty programmer. I've never let anybody who knows what they're doing actually see the code that powers it. But that's it. It's been running for 7 years now. So it works.
It's incredible. Well, you bring up a lot of really great points, especially about what is this magic and how do I do it? Because I don't, what do I know? And it's funny. People ask all the time, they're like, well, how do you know how to do this? I'm like, my two best friends, Google and YouTube. Like right. None of us really know because it wasn't exactly taught in school. I mean, now, yeah, with Code Academy and other, institutions that have that focus, but we weren't given that. It's like, I'm going to go online. I'm going to figure out how to how to build it. And then we'll just kind of go from there. Right. So I really admire that. And it also kind of goes to show you, to a lot of the audience as well too. It's like, I think people always think, oh, well, this is my job. This is what I do. I'm not related to, in any way to technology. So therefore, like, I can't do it. And it's like, well, so
I think we have a tendency to put up roadblocks for ourselves. I can't do this because of this. I can't do this because of this. And I mean, I did it for years, and it was literally just, I don't have an alternative plan. Okay, I'm going to dive into this now. But probably had I had intention, would have done it years prior.
It's true. I mean, when we back ourselves into a wall of like, well, I don't have another option. So it's either go through it. I can't go back. Where would I even be going back to? So let's talk about Meddling. Like, what is the mission still the same? And then I was, reading that one article that I'd mentioned to you when we were talking through email, and I was reading about the 4 basic capabilities of data analytics. And I thought it would be great for you to touch on that as that being part of your focus. Feel free to jump in really anywhere there, but like the mission, the data, the why, how this is actually shaping or how it's better understanding what the people actually want and how it actually also helps streamline a lot of these inefficiencies that you were mentioning earlier.
Yeah. I mean, I try and make it very clear that, I'm not saying, the platform is not saying, and the numbers are not saying to anyone to go sign this artist.
Right.
Or go sing this song. And I have, focused lately on becoming more careful about this, but trying to provide you with all the context you can possibly have to know, like, I should check these things out in this order. But it doesn't mean that, just because it's viral on TikTok or what it used to be, getting playlists of New Music Friday, does not mean that I should go sign this. It doesn't mean people care about it. It could be any number of things, particularly when music is really there to support other social interaction. Just because it's a dance trend doesn't mean people care about the song. Right. I don't know that you're going to see a lot of second hits from these TikTok stars. This tends to happen with every platform. There's usually one because it is in itself its own story, but you at least need to be aware of it and know what maybe else is going on around an artist. So I have tried to lately do a better job of giving more context. Say, sure, this is happening here. There's also indication, here, and here, that it's happening in other places. People actually care about this. They want to listen to the song and not just watch the video. Like actual context clues to say, this probably has a real fan base somewhere, or is growing a real fan base somewhere, other than just this is a thing that's happening. Because a computer is only going to be able to tell you so much, and I'm trying to solve for the hours a day of just crawling the internet to know that you're at least getting complete capture. Mm-hmm. But I'm not trying to solve for someone in an A&R department having a vision for an artist's career.
You bring up a very strong point that I think sometimes I spent a very brief time in A&R, and it was for Virgin Records back in the early 2000s. And I get it because they're so swamped at the people that they were already managing, if you will, to be constantly at the ground. And I was a kid, so I'm constantly looking at like all of these amazing artists coming through that, you wouldn't have otherwise known about. Sometimes they're more quick to be like, here's what we already have, and let's just find a trend. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because you brought up a really good point of like, just because as a dance on TikTok, the song mixed with the dance is doing well, doesn't mean that there's long-term sustainability with the music of the person who created that initial track, you know. And it was just, you were making me think of like, oh wow, we you know, it's the newer version of one hit wonders in a lot of ways. And so I like that you kind of bring up like, hey, this isn't necessarily saying, you know, go sign this person or this is the next big thing automatically. Just saying like, hey, this is what's happening with the people. This is what's getting attention right now. And I think that makes such a greater case for like understanding the audiences better versus automatically thinking, you know, let's just get the person because they're a trend. It's like, well, wait, maybe let's just understand the audience better. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think, you know, there probably is a viable business model of just grabbing, you know, what you can, but that's good in theory. Mm-hmm. What really happens is, you know, okay, something's popping off. We don't know what it is yet. We don't know if there's a following yet. We don't know if there's more to this artist story yet, but we feel we have to move today because someone else is going to move tomorrow. So they tend to like throw out, you know, a singles deal with an option for 9 more singles or whatever. And then somebody else jumps in tomorrow. And then suddenly, in order to be competitive, you know, it's a 6-album deal and you're, you know, committing a couple $1 million to this thing because you feel like you have to have it. And now other people are in on it. So there's kind of groupthink. Okay, well, all these other people are in on it too. This must be great. This must be worth, you know, the $7 million we're going to pay for this thing. Then you still end up with nothing. But, you know, the idea that you started with, you know, a month ago in this hypothetical scenario might have worked. You know, grabbing it at a singles deal, seeing if there's something to support there, you know, bringing other resources to bear and testing out on a wider market. It's not a terrible idea. I'm not saying that you know, there isn't a viable business for all of that, but it tends to get out of hand pretty quickly. And just in practice, I haven't really seen that work very well.
Yeah, I mean, also another really great point. I mean, the competition, you know, them all feeling like, well, if we don't sign them, then somebody else will. And it's like, well, then I feel like you're swimming upstream because you're all just fighting out for the same things versus just trying to be niched and different in the market. And then on top of that, when you invest in that person, just like you felt with you know, making Meddling, it's sort of like, we can't go back. We got to make this work. And sometimes I feel like that almost ends up forcing what a little bit of extra patience. Had we waited a little bit longer to see how that person would be, we would have saved time, energy, and money and built a brand more off of the back of very strategically talented artists that are also well liked by their audiences. Yeah. And you know what I mean? And I feel, go ahead.
It also goes into, you know, what I think is a major problem is that I don't think, you know, if you're an artist listening to this, I don't think that you know the difference or that there is a difference in the brand of signing to, you know, 2 different major labels. I used to be able to tell you, you know, what one of these labels stood for and what their area was. And now, you know, if you're an artist and you're looking down, you know, 2 different deals, I think you're just looking for the biggest check. I used to lose deals all the time to smaller labels to shittier deals because they had better brands as labels. And in the indie space, it's easier to do that even, you know, now. But I think the labels have done a pretty bad job about communicating their own brands. And so, you know, artists just want to see the biggest check and they want to see, you know, validation off of one of these brand names. I don't think one matters to the next. And I think if they did a better job of kind of the curation and identity that you're talking about, you could carve out, you know, spaces in the industry rather than just all running at kind of the same things head first.
Yeah, it's money and validation, you know, to co-brand your name with the label. But, you know, then a lot of artists are also seeing, okay, when they've only thought that way in the short term, more often than not, they've discovered that if they were quick to execute from the artist side, if they were quick to execute for that co-branding or for that, you know, opportunity, and they didn't read the fine print, you know, they start to run into problems that they hadn't thought otherwise could happen, especially since they're the one with that A, was bringing the talent and B, bringing the audience. And I think that when there's the ability to educate the artist from a standpoint of let's slow down just for a minute while moving efficiently, but like,
Yeah.
there's more creative ownership than ever before, right? Now, I was reading in Hypebot. Well, there's a few different articles that I was reading on everything that's going on with you, and I like that there was said in there, data analytics split into 4 basic capabilities in order of complexity: descriptive, what is happening; diagnostic, why it happened; predictive, what will happen next; and prescriptive, what you should do about it. I would love if you could expand on those.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what I'm talking about. Like, I think it's easy to say, or it's easy for Meddling to say, okay, this is what's happening,
Mm-hmm.
and this is why this is happening. This is why you're seeing these reactions on these platforms. Here's how it's moving from one to the next. This was, is now viral on Spotify because it came up with TikTok, for example. It's just a super easy case. And then that's why it's, getting streamed in these markets. That's easy to say. I can, even, say, okay, well, it has this trajectory over here, so it's likely to do this, this, and this. That's even, not out of the question. What I think is to say, okay, that means that you should then go sign this. That's what I try and stay very far away from. It's simply, a limitation of, AI ML, which is essentially just pattern matching,
Mm-hmm.
to then say, okay, go do this.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, if we let these algorithms just dictate, okay, that means you're going to sign this thing, you're going to sign this thing, you're going to sign this thing because it matches what we think is has had a track record of success, we'd all still be listening to dubstep. Like, you
Right.
have to let a human at some point interact with something, feel something, and I think there's a touch and feel to these things that a computer is not going to be able to grasp.
So, it's interesting. I mean, that's the part I think sometimes people miss with AI, with data analytics. You still need human behavior to understand what needs to happen next from this information, or for them to provide new information. Otherwise, to your point, we'd still be listening to stuff. And I mean, I was thinking about, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about even like watching completely unrelated, but watching the 2017 market to the 2021 market in crypto, near identical in human behavior, but the on-chain metrics allow you to kind of see what is happening, why it happened, and what will happen next. And it provides prescriptive of, here's the options of what you can do about it to be better prepared, knowing that this is basically what we're witnessing. And I think you can see that in pretty much anything, that the data gives us the ability as humans to make decisions on more calculated decisions on what we should do next. So at least we're putting some thought into it and understanding how that is affecting the people that it's affecting, versus simply just, relying on like, hey, that looks good, let's just try that and waste our money.
Yeah.
Right. So 7 years for Meddling at this point, right? You're up to about 7 years now.
That's I think so.
And nice, you'll be at that 10 years overnight success here any day now. When people like, I look forward to our conversation in 2024 and see how that goes. But what do you think, if we're looking at the new landscape for creating music, in this content-driven world versus, I was reading one of those articles, right? Like, artists used to release albums every 3 to 4 years, and there was this huge anticipation. First of all, it's been incredible watching some of the early independents that were like, no, I'm going to do a song a week, and I'm just going to interact with my fans, and just, it'll be out on SoundCloud, it'll be, out on Spotify. Here we go, every week, I'm going to own all my masters. It's an entirely new world for the artist. What's been your take on this new landscape for creating music in this new content-driven world?
I mean, there's obviously, good side and bad side. Great side, we get to see it putting, more and more power in the hands of creators directly in terms of how you actually want your music to get, consumed, released, put out there, how you want to present, your vision to the world is fantastic. Again, if you want to do that every week, if you want to be able to interact directly with friends, if you want to, have, share your demos, if you want to, bring people behind the curtain, or put out a polished product that reflects how you want it to be heard or seen, put out, like we've seen a bunch of like a visual album instead of just, a record. Those are all great things.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are, unfortunately, past a certain level, still gatekeepers. They're just different gatekeepers. And so now you have, streaming services that are going to determine who hears what and when. And those services really just want people to spend hours in app, listening to anything on their platform. They don't really care if it's your music or somebody else's music or whatever. In fact, they prefer it to be a podcast because they don't pay royalties on it. But they don't have a motivation to help you grow an audience or help a genre grow a niche or anything like that. For a long time it's SoundCloud rap was a genre. Spotify playlist was kind of a genre unto itself. It was just, these are the things that will do well in these ecosystems. And I think it's become increasingly difficult to create a digital scene. I think that, there are tastemaker, channels and playlists in places, that feels very impersonal. And, I used to know kind of where to go and who to talk to for the music that I cared about. And I think that's increasingly difficult. We haven't really translated that into, the music consumption experience well.
So it almost feels a little fragmented in a way right now.
Well, certainly, when we've made it infinitely easier for the creators to put their stuff out there, and we've made it infinitely easier for them to even create. I mean, you look at, the advancements in song creation, collaboration tools, like that's all great. You have huge songs that are getting, put out by major pop stars that are written by like some, Lithuanian 20-year-old who just put a beat up on a website somewhere. That's awesome. And the democratization of that process is great. But I think it's harder and harder now for the audience to actually interact with that content in a way that they want to.
Mm. How so? I would like how would you see that, they would, or how do they want to interact with that content in the changing environment?
SoundCloud was great for a while, and then they just raised too much money and had to go mainstream, and it doesn't have that community in those spaces anymore. Which I understand, but it was great for a while. Bandcamp, does a couple of interesting things, but they've really been very reluctant to be their own kind of DSP and bring everything together. They allow, artists to have their own pages, and they'll do some, surface level editorial curation or whatever, but they don't really create spaces to group multiple artists together in that way yet. I would love to see, what used to look like the blogosphere before it kind of, ad revenue died. And then I think, streaming services came in and kind of took over curation. I think they did it right at a point. We were at like this, post ironic optimist segment, in time. And, anything that wasn't the top 10% kind of got lost. And you saw, Pitchfork now is a Condé Nast property, and they're reviewing Taylor Swift and Bieber albums like with a straight face. And like that would just never be the case before. And I think then you lose the maybe lower paying but culturally important scenes beneath that.
I love everything you're saying, man, because and it leads to my question of,
I just don't know how to fix it yet. Don't ask me how to fix it. I haven't gotten that far.
Well, how do you fix it? No. You will know. I'm hopeful that, well, you first of all, you mentioned, I love when you said they don't have the motivation to help you grow an audience or niche when we're talking about the streaming service like Spotify. And then you're talking about like SoundCloud, about not having that community anymore, and then this kind of that transition from the blogosphere to the streaming and all that. And I've been living through all of it over the last 22 years. It's been interesting to watch. Does Web 3.0 usher in community a tighter bond between creator and consumer, reduction of the gatekeepers, and a cohesiveness of the creativity and bringing more people together and what's possible. Does Web 3.0 and blockchain and NFTs and that whole world start to kind of scale back the fragmentation and kind of bring it back into that whole, here's the audience, here's the niche, here's the community, here's us, all of this being together?
I mean, listen, the answer is, of course, I hope so.
Right.
But I haven't seen, the mechanisms by which any of that would happen yet. And I haven't seen a compelling argument for why bringing in those factors does those things.
And it's early.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Which is why I say I hope so. I just haven't seen it.
Yeah. It's I'm seeing the two sides of the NFTs because I'm in like two different communities. Well, on the music side, you clearly see, artist A just dropped an NFT with the album attached, doing these little experiential things with it. They sell $2 million worth in 8 minutes. It's rare. It's not always happening that way, but that's the hype. Right. And then that's the headline. And then what do people instantly gravitate towards besides the technology feat that just did? The money. But then on the other side, you see, and that's where I think I'm trying to see, I love the long game attribute of what this side hopes to solve, which is, hey, here's how we're wanting to do the NFTs. And before we do them, we would like everybody in the community to join us in a conversation about this because this is community related, and jump in our Discord and let's have this conversation over here. And in doing so, here's our mission. Here, we want to answer questions. We want you to be a part of this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you have, I can make a shit ton of money. Or you can have yes, we can, but we want to sustain the art and we want to sustain the community, and we want the NFT attached to it to be part of the ongoing community membership, if you will, and how we all grow as a unit together. And so once this starts getting more headlines, which might be a while, and a behavioral cause, and this gets weeded out, I think then we'll start to be able to see, kind of to your point, like the hope so kick in a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean,
right?
out of the two of those things, though, I think that the largest chance for what I'm talking about, which is, community and spaces and scenes, is probably going to be on the Discord side and not the NFT side.
Yes.
It may drive that. I think that NFTs so far have just shown me that people want to have new ways to interact with art and artists.
Yes.
But that's kind of it so far.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, certainly something like Discord, there probably are, those things starting to pop up there that I just don't know about.
Yeah. And, and that's where, it's interesting. It's interesting to watch. And you're right. We're only just now seeing people start to experiment with the utility side of NFTs away from, the art of like, oh, hey, well, this allows you to get into this. Anybody that owns this NFT gets into this restaurant, and you can sell the NFT at any time you want, and then only people with NFT can get in the restaurant, or something. I mean, you're starting to see people play around with those concepts, but until then. But I love the community aspect, and I was mentioning before the show and some of our discourse about like, there's without, you got Discord, but then you got Twitch, you got this metaverse, and you've got gaming. I mean, artists they're cross-pollinating a lot of concepts now. I think they're collaborating more than ever, right? Do you see, like, how are they dictating the direction of the industry? Because there's just so much going on. It's like, oh, hey, I'm gaming over here on Twitch with my buddy who's a big gamer, but he loves my music. And so now we're just actually going to put that in there. And millions of people are watching us. Oh, by the way, go buy my merchandise, which is an NFT, which, I mean, it's like, it's wild.
Yeah.
How are artists leading the way in some ways for new concepts that we hadn't previously thought of? Or how are they just dictating the direction of the industry as a whole?
I mean, they're certainly, I've learned to be creative. You have to be creative about how you're getting, your music out there, or your merch, your NFT, how you're going to make money off of your craft. And I'm all for, getting them out there. I think that also, putting that control into the artist's hands, like you said, originally SoundCloud, but now, like, if you look at, Bandcamp or Patreon, where like I'm not subscribing to Spotify, I'm subscribing to an artist. Like some of those models are really interesting. The long term of that, I think is also unfortunately that now there's just a very crowded marketplace. It's, whatever it used to be, new releases per month, and now it's something infinitely higher than that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what the numbers are these days. And I don't know that they really all should be there. Like, I think that you're going to see this take two different directions. Spotify wants everyone to be a creator to feed directly into the system, and everyone who's a creator to be a consumer, on that same system. And that to me sounds like just a whole lot of noise. And I think then maybe, Apple as a knee jerk to that probably reduces the number of releases they actually put out through their store or a platform for a while, or something else that's going to make it look a little less chaotic.
It's so true. I mean, at least I completely agree. When you think about, you create and submit it to us and feed our system, you consume, you feed our system, ready, go. And we want billions and billions and billions and billions and billions, because this is how we are making the money.
Right.
And they've just controlled chaos in doing so. And there's been repercussions, I think, from that. I think that there's been a lot of, the noise has been becoming more and more amplified and oversaturated, and everybody outdoing another dog-eat-dog world. I mean, I get it. I mean, I know that the world's been for a long time a dog-eat-dog world, but like, I would like to think that we're living in a new era where it's like, look, let's just remove ourselves from the noise for a moment. What is it you want? How is it you like? And data is perfect for also analyzing this, but like, what is it you want? How is it you like to dictate that? What level of control is it that you would like to do? Where is it that, you feel that you can, what are your options? What are the different things that you can have to, build this infrastructure, and then move from there? Because the moment that so-and-so sees so-and-so, who sees so-and-so, who saw so-and-so on TikTok, and then on Instagram, and then that person got, fed on Spotify, and like, oh, that's a new metric of success, so I've got to beat that, then I've got to do this. And they're all chasing the thing that's not even necessarily paying them on top of that, while also chasing a status or, but they're feeding the system. So it's like, It's almost reverse, like, hey, and I remember even having conversations with people where they're like, hey, did you know that this person over here who's a composer makes about $800,000 a year just off of doing this, leads a happy life, he's traveling, doing his thing. It's just like, yeah, I'm a composer, I do this, here's how I own this part, this is how I own that part, you guys have at it. I think that there's just such a rush sometimes for the validation, as you brought up, and the fame and all this other stuff. And I'm like, that won't fulfill you. You have to really take time to, like, what is it you want with your music in relation to the audience, and then build the infrastructure from there.
Yeah. I mean, I think all hope that making good music, good art is enough.
Right.
And that you don't have to do all this other nonsense to just get it out there, get it in front of audience, get it heard. So I think that, the streaming services, or however you're consuming that music, needs to shoulder some of that responsibility and say, listen, if there's a creator out there who makes something that deserves to be heard, it's going to be heard. And then they don't have to be chasing, everyone's attention, which is already split in 10 different ways. And because that's just going to split their attention in 10 different ways. Like you said, it becomes, self-perpetuating.
Right. And if we optimize the end consumer's behavior, we all benefit, versus like fragmenting the entire, attention deficit that's happening. But that's neither here nor there. That's just, my rant. What's going on with you guys right now at Meddling? Like, what do you have coming up? What's next? Anything fun that you're working on that's like a new implementation?
Right now I've been working on this year. Really, I've been focusing on launching a product for music publishers, and that has been, in the works for 5 years now.
Wow.
Which is what I thought was going to be a very simple question of to say, okay, I can show record labels, rising artists. Now I just need to, it shows publishers, rising songwriters. So all I need to do is attach, the songwriters to all the records and then show them what's rising. And turns out that information doesn't exist anywhere. You can't just say, okay, here's who wrote these songs and what percentages and who, who's published by who. And then, these songs are attached to these records or embodied in these records. And here it is. So this has been a quest now of a number of years to try and get, access to some of the correct data and then glue it together in interesting ways that then gives you with a high level of confidence that information. And that's been, a challenge for years and years. I finally have rolled out, a version for publishers and started onboarding some publishing clients. So that's the focus kind of this year, I think.
Do you ever look back and go, just seeing the two different lives that you had, one as an A&R music guy and one as the SaaS developer? There's so,
yeah.
I mean, and they need each other, but it's so because of your life's work right now. But it's just, do you ever look back and go, interesting, like that's a whole other, because you left I'm relating to you in the fact that I was thinking about how I remember when I left kind of more of the front end side of the tech savvy startup venture capital world. And I was like, I'm going to go over here and develop like my audience online and like do all this stuff. And I remember people were like, so you're a blogger now? And this is like in 2013. I'm like, no, I'm not really a blogger. I'm just like building my audience. And they were just like, you're going to leave all this? I mean, do you ever just like look at the old life and like the new life, but at the same time, they're using each other, right?
Yeah, it's hard not to, particularly when, there are times when sitting down to code this shit is just really annoying.
Right. That's so true.
Like, man, I could be having a martini at Soho House right now with the managers. Like,
God,
that was, sure. And there is a large part of, the musically creative stuff, working with artists that I miss, but at the same time, this just has to get done. Like, somebody has to do it, and no one else is. And so I don't really have a choice. And I think honestly the music that I care about and got into the business to work in doesn't have a way to find an audience right now. And so until that part gets solved, I would be very frustrated again working, back in my past life as an A&R right now, I think.
That line right there, you just said too about it has to get done. And that's very mission driven, purpose driven. And it just kind of shows you like, nah, I mean, I could be playing for here, but I'm playing for here. And this gap is big enough that someone's got to do it, and it's going to be me. Thank you. Because it's not easy for a lot of people. And I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. I'm like, well, someone's got to do it. I guess I'm going first, and you guys can all watch the whole way there. Right. And then in 10, 15, 20, 30 years, you're like, man, like, wow, that just like all blew up out of nowhere overnight. You're like, yeah, overnight. You watched the whole thing.
I hate that myth of the overnight success really kills me. Because I think that's also, when you talk about putting up mental blocks, reasons to not do a thing, it's easy to look around and say, well, look, these people have done this, this, and this, and like they're already wildly successful at it, and that just came out of nowhere, and surely I don't have that skill, whatever. And like, that's not ever the case. It's always taken them years to get there. It's always taken them, plenty of strife. You just don't hear about it until it's already there.
So it blows up. Yeah, I'm going through the Audible again of Robert Greene's Mastery, and talking exactly about that, the whole 10,000 hour part, and like the part that just the people just don't see, and that a 10-year run will give you your yield. But like a 10-year like actual, and that's with consistent, grounding in your constant learning of the thing that you are building upon. And it's just, and then, also to your point, people don't see it until all of a sudden they see it. And I kind of try to remind people sometimes too. I'm like, well, when you see a 25-year-old that started at 13, you're seeing their 12-year run come to fruition at a young age. So you're just seeing like, oh, they're 25. And it's like, yeah, They started at 10. Like they were unboxing on YouTube or whatever, like 15 years ago. What do you want me to tell you? Like, before you go and, I mean, you were probably playing, soccer or kickball or whatever, when they were 10, and they were like, oh, let me do this thing with this microphone on YouTube or whatever it might be. So I love that you said, but it has to get done. And I think that that's such a guiding North Star principle. So I really admire you for saying that, because, it's purpose driven. So this has been incredible. Where can everybody find out about Meddling? Where can they reach out to you or find the socials? What are all the details?
I mean, no socials, but if you ever want to check it out, just Meddling, meddling.co. Little button on there to shoot me a note if you're a label and want to discover artists, or if you're a publisher and want to discover songwriters or an agency or whatever.
Oh, this is incredible. And on there, they can get directly in touch with you, like easy. Okay, perfect. Travis, this is awesome, man. I love what you're doing. I love your mission. I love looking forward to seeing, how far it goes. And honestly, I think you're at a really, kind of back to this whole 10-year thing. I mean, you're 7 years in, but like, talk about the changing time where this is needed. It's sort of like, no, I've been playing for where we're heading.
And then now the market has come to the product. It's pretty wild.
Right? You're like, I knew it. Like, that's sometimes the best feeling, is that, Noah waited, 40 years before the rain came. So, no, incredible, man. Thank you again for being on the show. Hang back for, just 1 second. But
thanks for having me.
Yeah, true loved having you on. And everybody that's listening, please go check out meddling.co, meddling.co. If you have any questions, reach out to Travis, please do so. We are living in a beautiful time where you can make better decisions on things, whether you're an industry executive or you're an artist, or you want to know more, you want to help, learn more of the value, please reach out to him. Thank you guys truly for tuning into On Top of the Covers each week. It does mean a lot to us, our movement to the contribution of music culture, as we say, not necessarily industry, but culture worldwide. And also, thank you guys for giving us 5 stars on Apple. It really does help expand the show. For those of you that haven't yet, please do so. You can still also watch this video if you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify, iHeart, Google Play, radio.com, all of the other 20, 30 other platforms. You can watch this interview on our YouTube channel. Please go there, subscribe. You can leave comments there. It's us. We respond to the comments as well there, as well as on all major platforms at We Are Orlove. So Orlove on YouTube, at We Are Orlove on Instagram, and then at Matt Gottesman for me. If you want to reach out personally and ask any questions, it is me. I answer them every day. The DMs are getting crazy this time around this time of year, but or just maybe what's going on in general. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Thank you so much, and we're out.